Hey everybody, welcome to Module 3, which is our Sci Fi module. So this week we're reading two science fiction stories from two very well-known science fiction writers, Kurt Vonnegut and Ursula K. Le Guin. Both stories depict an attempt to create an ideal society. In Kurt Vonnegut's story Harrison Bergeron, we see a fictional future society where everyone is equal. That may sound great, but the ways in which that equality is achieved create a painful violation of people's right to self-determination. Characters are forced to wear weights and earpieces that prevent them from reaching their full potential and living what we would consider a normal life. The society the Bergerons live in is supposed to be a utopia. Everyone was finally equal. A perfect, ideal society. But it fails miserably. In the end, Harrison Bergeron is a villain in the eyes of the handicapper general, but perhaps a hero to the reader. The society of Omelas, described in Ursula K. Le Guin's story, appears to be perfect. Look at the flowery language she uses to describe the celebrations in the beginning of the story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Underneath that beautiful exterior is an ugly shadow, where the happiness of everyone else depends upon the abject misery of another. This utopia is only possible because someone somewhere else is suffering. For the discussion board activity this week, create an original post where you describe how one of these stories contains a dystopia, meaning a society that contains a grave injustice. Do you think this story could be a statement about contemporary society? And how so? I think you could say that about both of our stories this week. So this week, we also have our first essay due, critical response number 1. In this essay, you must write at least 750 words about one of the writers thus far. Because many of the texts we've read thus far involve representations of patriarchal authority and prescriptions of gendered behavior, meaning how a specific gender is supposed to act, you could choose one writer and analyze the representation of gender roles in their work. For this essay, you may absolutely use what you have already written in the first two discussion boards and build off of one of those posts. So, if you want to focus on gender roles, you could choose either Sylvia Plath and her poems Daddy and Colossus, Seamus Heaney and his poems Digging and Punishment, Jamaica Kincaid's brief story Girl. Now, if you choose any of these first three authors, you'll be doing some very close reading because these are short works. You could also choose longer works like the two short stories, the one by Richard Wright called The Man Who Was Almost a Man, or you could choose the story from T. Corrigan Boyle, Greasy Lake. Now, if you're more inspired by the readings from this week, if you're more inspired by the sci-fi readings, you may also expand your discussion board post into a 750-word essay on one of the science fiction stories from this week. If you focus on either of these stories, you would focus instead on how the story depicts a society that attempts to be ideal, but which really is a dystopia where there is a grave injustice. I think the story Harrison Bergeron contains some stereotypical ideas about gender, or is that really the fault of the handicapper general who enforces these limitations on people? So whichever topic you choose to write about, Make sure the essay has an introduction paragraph where you provide some background on the author and the stories or the poems that you're discussing. Then state your thesis at the end of this introduction paragraph. Then, in the body of your paper, make sure that each paragraph has a clear main idea and that you use specific references to the reading to support your ideas. Direct quotes are encouraged. And I also remind you to cite them properly using MLA style and explain to the reader what they should see there. Don't just toss the quote in and expect to be done with it. Explain in your own words how that quote supports your main idea. Every essay also needs a conclusion paragraph where you sum up the main points of the essay and leave some perspective on the important ideas in the story or the poems from contemporary literature, or what aspect of contemporary literature these stories really exemplify. I look forward to reading your discussion board posts. So, just to recap, the discussion board post is due Thursday, and it has to be about one of the science fiction stories this week. Remember, your response to a classmate's post, that is also an important part of the activity, that's due by 5 o'clock on Friday. Then, critical response number 1, or 750-word essay, that's due by the end of the day on Friday, so by 11:59 p.m. on Friday. So remember, I'm always available via email. I also have in-person office hours Mondays and Wednesdays between 11 and 12 and 3 and 5. We can also make an appointment to meet virtually through Blackboard Collaborate on Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday. So enjoy the reading, and I'll see you on the discussion board.